All right, I think we are about ready to get started. Um, so first of all, thanks to everybody for being here today. We really appreciate it. And I want to introduce myself. My name is Christy Splitt, and I am OLCV's Development Director. And I am both our past and interim Oregon Conservation Network Director, which means that I help run Oregon's Environmental Coalition, along with a lot of great organizations that work with us. So we'll dig in here a little bit. I do see we have a hand raised, and that brings up some housekeeping. Our coworker April, who's our development associate and all-around great human, is going to be helping us out with the Q&A and with anybody who has questions or comments. April, do you want to say hi?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, April. So she's going to be our voice for questions. And so, but one thing really quickly, it's our first time doing a webinar like this. So if there are any awkward moments or any technology gaps, just know it's our first time. We've done a few practices. Doug and I were even practicing like 20 minutes ago, trying to figure out a tough nut to crack. So if you have questions, like I said, April will be helping us out with that. You can ask in the Q&A feature, and she'll be keeping tabs there. And then we have a couple of spots during the presentation where we can do questions. And I did see someone had their hand raised. It'd be great if you could put your question in the Q&A, and then we can make sure that we get it taken care of, and April could help you too if it's just more of a technological question. And then I also just popped April's email here. It's april@olcv.org if you have anything you want to provide in a different format or having trouble with the Zoom functions. So we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see, and April, do interject if there's anything like urgent or technologically weird that we need to deal with that you're hearing from other folks. Okay, so first of all, we just want to acknowledge the day today. It's International Workers' Day, or May Day, or Labor Day, depending on where you are in the world. We are really proud to work closely with a lot of Oregon's labor movements. We are partners at the Progressive Table on Politics. We show solidarity with each other as we can at the Capitol. We're all friends and friendly, and it's really great to have that partnership. I do want to share too that earlier today, my daughters, 2 and 5, and I attended a rally online. It was put together by a bunch of the great groups. You can see me circling the arrow here. I know it's small on the screen, but there was a ton of folks that helped put on this rally. It was led by CAUSA as usual. It's an annual tradition and one of my favorite days at the Oregon Capitol when the May Day rally happens. And it's just a good reminder to us at OLCV that during a time like this where essential workers are doing so much, whether it's putting food on the table, grocery store, stocking shelves, there are union and non-union, I suppose, workers of all kinds, people that are immigrants, people that are from here. And we just really want to give a shout out and value, just honor the value that those folks provide. So moving on from there, and very relatedly, we also just wanted to let folks that are on the webinar know that we've been doing a lot of work around equity, diversity, and inclusion at OLCV for years now. We have an equity statement, a longer one that's available online at our website, and we would love for you to check it out and dig in. We have some resources and some books that we've read together and articles that we'd love for you to take a look at too. And one thing we're working on right now is actually a land acknowledgement that would kick off or be a part of our event. We have postponed our annual event to September, and then we're holding this event sort of on the day of May 1st, right, that we would have had our event. But this is something we want to have done by the end of the summer. And so we've been learning a lot about and I think I just want to back up a second and say, you know, we work in the environmental space where land and nature are just core to what our organization does and what we as individuals care about. And there's a lot to unpack there when you think about our land in Oregon and who it belonged to in the past and who it belongs to now and how that all happened and came to be. So we've been exploring that, and just really want to start out by honoring the Native peoples, the First Nations of Oregon and the Pacific Northwest. So we'll go ahead from there into just honoring too, thanking our sponsors. These are the folks that would have been the sponsors of our event today. And we just want to make sure that you all know these great businesses that have helped us out and been there for us as funders of our annual event. So just a shout out to them. You'll notice in our emails, we talked about Worthy Beer. We just are huge fans of theirs. So if you see it at the grocery store, they're good friends. All right, so I'm going to turn things over now, for the most part, to Doug Moore, our executive director. And Doug's been with the organization for, I think, over 8 years now, maybe 9. And he's done such a great job. And when he came on, I didn't work at OLCV yet. And I watched already, before I even started working at OLCV, the difference he had made in kind of helping the organization to be a bigger political player, so that we can do even better as far as building our political power and sharing it with the rest of the environmental community. So I'll turn things over to my friend and my boss, Doug.
Thank you, Christy, so much. I really appreciate that. I am Doug Moore. I'm the executive director for the Oregon League of Conservation Voters. I started at the end of 2011, so 8.5 years. It seems, like an eye blink or one day in quarantine, as we're all at our homes. First thing is, I hope that everyone is doing well at home and staying safe. We appreciate each one of you, and really are concerned for ourselves and for you and for our families and friends in our communities in very uncertain times. So I hope that you're staying safe and staying at home and finding things to keep yourself positive and keep yourself occupied. So I also want to take a moment here to really thank all of our donors and our volunteers, the members of OLCV. The work that we do, the successes that we have achieving our mission don't happen without the work that you do, without the emails that you send, the actions you take, the contributions you make, the doors that you knock, although not right now, and all the work that you do on our behalf. Whether that's showing up at the Capitol, whether that's any number of the myriad things that we do as an organization. And just to remind everyone of the mission of OLCV and what it is that we do, our mission here is really, in one sentence, to build political power for the environmental community. We use that political power to help our partners and friends and other areas of the environmental community pass good laws, stop bad rollbacks, and really build toward a better, more environmental future. We build that political capital through our work in electing environmental champions to office, in some cases unelecting anti-environmental champions from office, and holding elected officials accountable for how they vote or don't vote. We also have lots of people on the ground throughout the course of the state. We have more than 25,000 members, many of whom hopefully will have an opportunity to watch this. So, but at the end of the day, the work that we do is supported by you, and we don't have a big win to celebrate like we do right now without the work that everybody did. So let's start off on a high note. All right, finally, we have a big win on climate. We're really excited about that, a cap on carbon here in Oregon. Governor Brown signed an executive order on March 10th, and it is, we believe, the strongest executive order nationwide. And what it does in very simple terms is it puts a cap on carbon that declines to meet our goal in 2045. It increases our clean fuels program to the strongest in the country, 25% by 2035. And if you think about our carbon emissions statewide, 40% of our carbon emissions are from transportation. And currently, the program was 10%. So that would be, roughly speaking, a 4% decrease in our carbon emissions. By increasing it to 25%, you're starting to get to a real big number there, 10% reduction statewide in our carbon emissions. So that in and of itself is just a huge step. Combined with that cap, and then one other thing, which is net zero buildings going forward. One of the things, if you are taking a look at articles right now, you're seeing that utilities are moving their power around and having struggles right now because commercial power is down, residential power is up, and industrial power is holding roughly steady. Well, if we have net zero buildings going forward, particularly the commercial sector, you can see the impact that would have right now through coronavirus, through all of us having to stay at home. So it's a really huge deal, but it's been a long road to get there. In fact, carbon pricing in Oregon predates by a long time my tenure here at OLCV. Not everybody on this call's engagement on this process. I see some of the names on here are people that have been doing this work for a really long time. I want to skip ahead a little bit to 2017. This is a rally for the Healthy Climate Bill. Many of you might remember lobbying on behalf of the Healthy Climate Bill in 2017. That bill made it to the Ways and Means Committee, and there it died. And we then began really knowing that we had to mobilize in the 2018 elections, which were largely about climate. In one specific instance, the governor's election in 2018, where OLCV really invested a huge amount on behalf of the governor. Chrissy, I think the next slide, there we go. So here is an image of our election report. We have that available in printed version. So I guess none of you can see it. But 2018 was the biggest electoral cycle in OLCV's history. We invested over $1 million, and we were one of the largest contributors to Kate Brown's re-election campaign. And in the final days of that campaign, you guys might remember the ads that were running on television where Newt Buehler got an F on the OLCV scorecard. And, he and the governor went back and forth time and again on climate change and what they would do and how they would combat climate change if they were governor. And that was a decisive issue in that election. So when we talk about the 2018 election being about climate change, it really was in the highest profile race, the most expensive race in the history of Oregon, the biggest race in the history of Oregon. Climate change was a decisive factor in Kate Brown's re-election. In addition, we helped elect climate champions on local level, on the state legislative level, all throughout the ballot. And I know Christy wants to highlight one of our favorite candidates, somebody that we've worked very closely with.
Yeah, I'll just give a shout out to Jenna Goodman Campbell. She's a Bend City Councilor. She's the person on the far right of the cover of that election report. And Jenna actually ran for the legislature and lost in Central Oregon in the Bend area, and decided to run again as a city councilor. And not only did she win every precinct in the city. She just works really hard and connects incredibly well with the people there, and just really knows how to talk about environmental values in a way that resonates with people, and that's just so important. She's exactly the kind of person that we love to see lead locally, and hopefully especially lead at this level or the legislature too. So we love Jenna and wanted to make sure you all knew that we love her.
So the election in 2018 was an example of us working on behalf of climate champions, part of the work that we do. Also a little bit of accountability for Newt Buehler and his bad votes and his anti-environmental stance. Moving into the 2018 legislative session, or the 2019 legislative session, and you can see this is a picture of some of our staff after doing some work, and not all of them are still on staff anymore, and that's always sad to see, but it was an exciting time, and they did a lot of great work. But this is the 2019 legislative session, where we had high hopes that our bill, the Clean Energy Jobs Bill, was going to pass. It was one of the take-home bills. We had been promised that this is going to happen, and then, of course, we had a whole slew, and it feels like it was like 10 years ago, but it was really just last year. We had a whole slew of hearings. Thousands of people showed up and testified, hundreds of hours of hearings. It was the most vetted bill of the entire legislative session, and it was poised to move. It passed the State House by a vote of 36-24 in a very exciting day. Representative Karin Power, who many of you have met, and if you haven't, you ought to, did a fantastic job of carrying that bill on the floor. And then, unfortunately, we ran into a Republican walkout, which was really, really very frustrating, as you might imagine. It's an incredibly anti-democratic approach to government. And basically, it just absolutely destroys everything that people work for. We work under a common set of values. If you win an election, you have the opportunity to govern, and this is just taking your ball and going home. And so we did a heck of a lot of work to hold those Republicans accountable. That, again, that's part of the mission of OLCV, is to hold people accountable for that. And you can see the wanted poster, and there was a huge digital campaign that was run, lots of attention and articles of the walkout. And unfortunately, we were not successful, but we tried. This is a protest in Hood River, Oregon, for Senator Chuck Thompson in Senate District 26, trying to demonstrate accountability to him. And the next slide we have the day that the Senate Democratic President, Senate President Peter Courtney, said that the bill was dead. And this is a very moving photo, and I think it was really evocative. And one of my favorite photos of all time is just the youth who had been working so hard, and our volunteers who'd been working so hard, turning their back on a legislative body that had turned its back on the need to act on climate change. Whether or not the Republicans were there, sacrificing our climate bill was just shameful, and was really unfortunate. And I really want to thank all of the people that were there every day for all their hard work. Nobody really could have seen that coming, but we didn't give up even after people said that our bill was dead. We kept fighting, and we continued to hold rallies as OLCV. If you want to go to the next one, Christy. We have here a rally on the Capitol steps. Really trying to continue to push the ball forward. And this advocacy at the end of the legislative session, let me be clear, was noticed. People noticed it. And after the legislative session ended, on that really sour note, we didn't just stop right there. We went right back to work as part of the Renew Coalition with our partners to continue to push for action on climate, and also to hold people accountable for what they didn't do. And this is our scorecard, which I think most people would agree was pretty hard hitting. We gave an incomplete to every senator who didn't take a stand on climate, or who was out of the building. And at the end of the day, there was a vote to send the Clean Energy Jobs Bill back to committee. And people that voted that way, they're not getting a great score as a consequence of that action. We're not going to let people off under the idea that that's just a procedural vote. I'm sorry, it's not just a procedural vote. You decided, you took a stand that you're sending the climate bill back, and we held them accountable for that. I will admit that in the midst of the executive order being signed and coronavirus, we haven't had an opportunity to update our scorecard. It's on the long list of things that we still need to do after the 2020 legislative session. So after the scorecard came out, we continued to organize for the 2020 session. We had been promised after 2018, 2019 is your year. Then after the walkout, I want to give credit to Speaker Kotek, Tina Kotek, and Governor Kate Brown. They said, we're going to get this done in 2020. We are not giving up. We're going to bring this bill in. It's going to be our priority. We're going to spend the next 6 months working on it. And we need you to continue to do the work that you do on the outside. We need you to organize. We need you to keep all those groups together. And so OLCV, with our partners at the Renew Coalition and all the people that you see on that list there, and so many of you on this call, continue to work and fight and be active on behalf of the Clean Energy Jobs Bill. And we held what is a fantastic rally on the Capitol steps. You could see it overflowing. And I want to take a moment to go back in time and look at the rally that we had here in 2017 and look at what we had in 2020. And you can see just the continued growth, the increase in activism, the people showing up, and the hard work that was being done by so many people to ensure that this bill was passed. That kind of growth going through really hard time, nobody's ever really seen a group be able to do that at the Capitol. And I want to thank all of you for showing up for that. And it was noticed. It was a big deal. And when the Republicans, unfortunately, walked out again, we worked to hold them accountable. We spent a lot of money and raised a lot of money to hold them accountable through digital ads, through cable ads in specific areas. And we're not letting them off the hook, I can promise you that. The activism from those rallies and the people that showed up and all the emails that were sent are the reason why the members of the House and the Senate were able to hold strong and say, no, we're not giving in to you. That accountability and the visuals of our ads and our members standing up for democracy, for climate, for our government, for our state, really resonated with legislators, and it was incredibly important. So unfortunately, it took an unprecedented fifth walkout by the Republicans to stop our bill from passing. But the good news is Governor Brown held to what she said she was going to do at the end of the 2019 legislative session, which is use all the tools in the toolbox. And she worked really hard. And we may not have loved everything that was in that bill, but she worked really hard to try and build a bill that people could work for. And there just was no appetite from the Republicans to just show up and do their jobs, which was just shameful behavior. So Governor Brown signed a sweeping executive order, and we want to take a second to show you a thank you video for the governor that celebrates that. And hopefully this works technologically. We just want to caution you that a video over Zoom can be a little bit spotty. So we're going to do a screen swap here. And I'm going to share my screen with you.
While you're queuing it up, I want to say that, one thing that developed is, I meant to show it while her picture was right in front of us, but Madison Daisy from Renew Oregon did such a great job organizing young people who really stepped up and took a leadership role in our movement. We were following them by the end, which is great. And this video really highlights that. So I just want to thank Madison Daisy and the whole Renew Coalition for really centering that effort.
All right, here we go.
All right, fingers crossed.
Our friends, we're like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And instead of saying what they want to be when they grow up, they say what they want to be if they grow up.
It's obviously the biggest issue we are facing as a generation.
I'm watching my kind of future slipping away.
People are just having an awakening of realizing what's actually happening.
Been down here since I was in 6th grade. Each year we'd be getting closer to passing some climate policy, and this year seeing the Republicans walk out yet again on my future discouraged me more than I ever have in the past.
If you don't agree with something in our political system, that is understandable. That's what a democracy is all about. But it's not about walking out when you don't agree with something and stopping the process.
I see Kate Brown signing this bill that we've been rooting for a long time, and it's just amazing that we don't have to be fearful of our future because Oregon is taking great leadership that it's been needing. She took a stand for what she said she was going to do and held herself accountable for her words really means a lot, especially in this day and age when people in power are saying they're going to fix all these things and they do nothing about it. I think that she's a great example of courageous leadership, and instead of just playing by the rules, because the rules haven't been working for us, she stepped out of the box and she did something that other world leaders were not willing to do.
I want to say thank you so much from the bottom of all of our hearts. It's been so many years that we've been trying to get this, and finally today we have been able to get the change we really need in Oregon.
Thank you for taking executive action. I hope you can keep pushing for more.
Seeing what Kate Brown just said, seeing what is written in this really inspired me once again.
It was this real materialization of we have allies and representatives that are standing up for the youth and how important that is.
It was all smooth until the very end.
Sorry about that.
All right, let's get this back up.
So what's next? Now that the governor signed the executive order and we're moving forward in a big way on climate, the next step is the Oregon Climate Action Plan. That through the Renew Coalition and all our myriad partners on climate, we're getting ready to enter into rulemaking, a new phase. So OLCV will be playing our role in this. We'll be amplifying the work that our policy partners do. There are a lot of groups that are going to be at the table on this: Oregon Environmental Council, Climate Solutions, Cocoon, ATNI, lots of little groups that will plug in and work on that. And the Renew table is going to really work to manage that process so that we are collectively as the environmental community being very strategic about that. And it's really with the desire to do two things here, which is make sure the rulemaking comes through in a strong way, but also plan the next steps on climate, because we know that there are going to be more steps that we're going to have to take. And as for what OLCV will be doing in this, keep in mind that it's our responsibility to hold people accountable. So when agencies aren't doing what they're supposed to do, that's where we're going to have to step in. We're going to have to let them know that what they're doing is not acceptable. And we're going to have to continue to amplify the work and the words of our partners to ensure that it's really going on there. And Christy and I, and I'm going to pass this over for Christy of this, we want to thank some friends of ours for all the work that they've done very directly.
Yeah, we have a team that works here with us at OLCV called the MCATs. It's the Metro Climate Action Team, and they are so awesome. They've been the best volunteers and supporters of our work. They show up. They're going to continue to show up in the rulemaking process and in dealing with agencies and all the minutia. And I know a bunch of them are on the call or on the webinar today. So we just wanted to say thank you so much to our MCATs. I tell the story too much of how my husband texted me one day during the legislative session to say, when we grow up, can we be MCATs? But that's our plan. So we can't wait to do when we have more free time and not two little kids on our hands. So we'll go ahead and swing into questions, and April's going to be our question master. One thing is I just saw like the most gracious and kind correction of a typo I've ever seen in my life. Thank you. I appreciate it. And April, what have we got?
So we have one question that Doug kind of touched on. I'm talking about the executive order, but someone is asking about the implementation process, and then specifically what can OLCV and OLCV members as individuals do to influence the process?
Yeah, I can give a little bit of an overview and then let Doug back clean up.
Yeah.
So there, right now, I guess I should be clear to say that the governor has been really clear with state agencies that while priority number one right now is addressing the urgency of the coronavirus situation in Oregon, that she still expects the agencies to be working at the same time to address climate change, which is another incredibly urgent emergency level situation. And so we're really, really proud. She wrote a letter when she was asked by the business community to postpone the rulemaking on climate change issues on the Oregon Climate Action Plan. She wrote a pretty strongly worded letter saying, no, thank you. And so we were really honored that just glad that she sees that you can work on two things at once. And so the agencies right now are making their individual plans, the agencies that are part of the process. And on May 15th, they'll each release a kind of timeline for their process for meeting their pieces of the Oregon Climate Action Plan and what public engagement will look like agency by agency. So that's kind of the process from the government side. Meanwhile, the Renew Oregon Coalition has been meeting, doing webinars with both the governor's office and with each other to talk through the executive order and kind of what to expect of the rulemaking process. So kind of the policy experts and the people who really want to doggedly follow the rules are going to be doing that work. And then what we're going to be doing at OLCV is looking for when people raise their hand and say, we need some grassroots support, because that's what we bring to bear. So if we're hearing that one agency is not doing what they should be doing or going in the wrong direction, or there's some sort of conflict and we need to help make sure that the public support for climate action now and bold climate action now is there, that will be when we reach out to members with action alerts or specific asks of ways to either submit testimony to an agency, email an agency director or the governor, do some social media. So kind of stay tuned and we'll let you know when we have that need for grassroots support. Doug, do you want to add anything?
First, I just want to say I think that's a great question, and thank you for that, because we're going to need lots of help from people. So we're going to need people to plug in and continue to do testifying, write testimony and submit it, and make sure that the agencies know that we're going to be watching them, and also continuing to work with legislators to make sure that legislators understand that they're going to need to fund this, and they're going to need to continue to pay attention to it. So yeah, I think that I really love that question, and I hope that everyone can continue to help us win this. You know, it's like we won getting the executive order, but we got to win the policy now on the implementation phase, and so it's going to take an unprecedented effort to really hold that accountable, because we know that our opponents, corporate polluters and anti-climate folks, are going to continue to try and weaken this at every step of the way. So we're going to have to be really on our toes collectively to be successful.
Great. Anything else, April?
We have some questions about the primary, but do we want to hold on to those until we get a little farther into the presentation?
I think that makes sense. We're going to talk about the May primary right now, and then right after that, we can take questions on the primary if that works. All right.
Sounds good.
Great. And if you have any other questions, just pop them in. We'll have another chance in just a couple minutes.
So I did see that there were a good batch of questions about the May primary. Really appreciate that. This has been a bit of an interesting time to do the work that we do right now. We're all learning and experimenting to see what it is that we can do to get the word out to voters. We can't do our work in the same way that we have been able to previously, but I really want to give some credit here to our staff, our organizers, our political director, Lindsay Scholten, and our organizers for really working to figure out different ways to connect with voters. So switching into some of the candidates that we've endorsed in different races, there's if you want to move up to the we've got 4 candidates here that we are really excited about here. I want to talk about the first 2, Tara Hurst for Portland City Council and Mary Pivoto for Metro. These are 2 amazing women who I've worked with for years. Tara is the executive director for Renew Oregon, which you guys have heard us say at least 25 times. Tara has been the architect and the director and the project manager, and really focused in on climate. She's run our climate campaign in the state, and it's just really an incredible opportunity for her to work for City Council. Many of you don't know Tara's background. She was Charlie Hales' chief of staff. She has an extensive amount of experience in city politics, both on the budgeting side and on the political side. And for climate and for the environment and for the issues that we all care about, having Tara on the City Council would be a real game changer going forward. Likewise, Mary Pivoto with Metro. Mary is the executive director for Neighbors for Clean Air, and she is just she's incredible. She's one of my favorite organizations and leaders to work with, because she just gets it. She understands the need for being hard sometimes, for accountability, and not just recognizing that, like, hey, if we write policy that's really good, people are going to automatically put it in there. They're just, those 2 candidates are really amazing. And I do want to, just before I go on to the next ones, we have videos of all interactions and conversations with each of these candidates so that you can get to know them a little bit better through the primary. Switching gears to Deschutes County, many of you know that we have, in terms of campaigns and where we've been investing for the last 8 years plus, we've really had a very significant focus on Central Oregon and the City Council. And one of the pieces of feedback that we received from our members in Deschutes County is they really wanted us to focus on the Deschutes County Commission. So Phil Chang is an endorsed candidate for us in that race, and I'd invite you to get to know him a little bit better. We're really excited about his candidacy, and our Central Oregon Regional Director, Nikki Romer, thinks Phil is pretty awesome. And when it comes to the candidates there, Nikki really is the expert.
Something, Doug, you might not know is Tara, Mary, and Phil, they all have worked in the environmental space. So he comes from doing kind of natural resources work, doing collaborations between various stakeholders to get things done around conservation and forestry and forest conservation. So we have like 3 environmental pros here that are really raising their hand, you know, taking pay cuts, time away from their families. I love how all the campaigns that we're talking about here, people that are parents and really family focused, but that they're willing to kind of raise their hand and sacrifice time with their loved ones to help be leaders in our state. I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome, Christy. Thank you for bringing that up. You know, serving in elected office is really hard. You know, it's a very thankless task for a lot of people. And for the environmental community, one of the things that's really important is to have environmental champions running for office. So, you know, it's always fantastic when folks do that. I want to switch gears to the Secretary of State's race. OLCV has endorsed Shemia Fagan. Many of you I know on this call are friends of Jamie McLeod-Skinner, who we think is a wonderful human being and would be a great public servant in whatever role that she took on. And I think it's really important to note, if we think that much of Jamie McLeod-Skinner, why we would endorse Shemia Fagan. It's because Shemia Fagan is a once-in-a-generation type of leader. She is incredibly charismatic. She is brilliant. And one of the things I think people don't really know about Shemia is she really is an environmental champion. She has a 91% lifetime OLCV score. She had a 94% in the last legislative session. In 2012, when I was running my first OLCV annual event, Shemia Fagan, while pregnant with her son, gave the pitch, which was the most successful pitch in the history of the organization because she took it seriously. She worked hard to help us out as an organization. And in 2013, in her first legislative session, she won an award from us as OLCV for her work to bring money to East Portland and Clackamas County, where she represented, for sidewalks, because there was a real problem there. So Shemia has been an environmental champion. She hasn't served on the committees of ours, but this is something that's very near and dear to her heart. And I want to tell a little story about Shemia around clean fuels. When we were trying to pass clean fuels, both in 2013 and then in 2015, Shemia sat down with me because she was getting all kinds of pressure from industry and she didn't know what it was. And her first instinct and the first thing that she did was she picked up the phone and she called us. And she said, "Tell me why this is an important bill." And then we sat down, we talked to her, had a 20-minute conversation. She's like, "Right, I know what to do. You guys are the experts on this. I'm an environmental champion. I'm going to be there for you." And she has been every time we've ever asked her to. And the second story about Shemia with regard to her service as a legislator and as a state senator is when the Republicans walked out both times in 2020 here on our climate bill and in 2019, the first thing that happened is Shemia picked up the phone and said, "I'm there for you. Anything you need, I'll do. I'll fight for you in caucus. I'll fight for you in public." And she has just been a real fantastic leader. And I know that not everybody knows her. I hope that you'll take the opportunity to watch the video so you can see her passion for the issues, her passion to be Secretary of State, and be a steward for democracy going forward. So first thing is, I'm pretty excited. I've got my ballot right here. I'm probably going to fill it out this weekend. I'm usually an early voter, so hopefully you guys all have your ballots. They're due Tuesday, May 19th. This year is new. You don't have to put a stamp on it. You can just put it out for your mail carrier or put it in a box, and it'll get there on its own.
And shout out to our friends at Next Up. It used to be the bus project for pushing on just ballot access in all the ways, but they led the way in passing this bill. So just a quick shout out. They're so excited.
If you get to the end of like Thursday, I would say, before election day, and you haven't mailed your ballot, that's usually when I would say you need to put it off in a drop box. But this year, pretty much any mailbox is a drop box, which is pretty exciting. So hopefully that'll help increase turnout across the state. And I do want to plug that if you're interested in where we've endorsed in different races, each one of those endorsements is on our website, www.olcv.org. And we'd love to have you take a look at that. So our work is not obviously going to stop in May. We have champions that we have endorsed for those offices, but we're also taking a look already to what we're going to be doing in November. And so I just want to touch base on some of the frameworks that we have considered and some of the things that are important to us and are influencing our political thinking for the November general election. And the first, you've heard me talk about this quite a few times, is accountability. We have some folks that need to be held accountable for their anti-democratic actions, for their anti-climate actions, for walking out on Oregon's democracy, and for walking out on Oregon's future. And we take that very seriously, and that's going to be one of the things that we focus on. Secondly, for some reason, legislators oftentimes believe like, oh, taking the environment is a tough vote, when the opposite is actually true. Generally speaking, being on the wrong side of the environment when you're voting in Oregon is a good way to lose an election. Since I've been in Oregon, not one candidate has lost because they've been too pro-environment, but a lot of people have lost election because they've not been pro-environment enough. So one of the things we want to do is when people who take important votes for us in the legislature are getting attacked on the environment, we want to make sure that we have their backs just like they had our backs in the legislature. And one of the other things that we're paying very close attention to from a ballot measure perspective is the campaign finance reform ballot measure. Now, the court has ruled that campaign finance limits are legal, but I think we do believe that's still important to make sure that we have that in the Constitution. You know, if you saw the Rob Davis articles, Polluted by Money, there's way too much money in Oregon's political system. And just like the Oregon Supreme Court ruled this time that, hey, campaign finance limits are legal, well, previously they ruled that they weren't. So let's not rest on just having a court case that says so. Let's make sure that we get this passed and get it in the Constitution so that we can have limits, so that we can reduce the influence of money in our political system. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about the national landscape, because we all care about our country. We don't just care about Oregon. OLCV is part of the Conservation Voters Movement, and that is comprised of our National League of Conservation Voters, and also similar organizations like ours in states around the country, from Washington to Florida, from California to Maine. There are hosts of different organizations that do the same work in their individual states. And together, the Conservation Voters Movement works to elect champions on state level, but also we're focusing on the US Senate and making sure that Donald Trump is not elected for a second term of office. So the work that you are doing here in Oregon on behalf of us also is part of a broader movement to help across the country. So, and we do want to also highlight one candidate that we're really excited about for the general election, also from Central Oregon. And she has a video up on our webpage as well. And it's a little bit of a different video, Eileen Kiley. And she's fantastic. She is another champion for the environment. She ran 2 years ago for House District 53 and lost, but she ran a really good race in a really tough district. And she's running again for Senate District 27, which is one of those accountability districts I alluded to a couple slides ago. And I know Christy is excited about this video for Eileen as well.
Yeah, she just is really excited about like her outdoorsiness, and I really like it. Like, I think, you know, we spend a lot of time working in Central Oregon. We have an organizer or a regional director out there that we love, Nikki Romer, or Nikki Largent, she got married. It just is like, when you see it, she's just outside. You can just tell how much she loves being outside in Central Oregon. It's great. I love outside in Central Oregon too, I can relate.
So I think this is another good time to stop and maybe ask questions.
And we had some people raise their hands too, so we'll let April go and then I'll kind of figure out how the hands raised thing goes.
We've got a comment in the chat that somebody is in the picture, so that's pretty cool. Nice.
Oh yeah. I forgot to show Jolie Boa too. We have there's a candidate for Lane County Commissioner that was back there and I forgot to. Oh well. Anyway, go ahead, April.
So I think that you all answered the questions related to election stuff, but we do have a couple other questions that came in about the executive order. Do you want to pivot back to that now, or should we wait and talk more about that later?
I'm happy to pivot back to those questions and make sure that we get as many questions answered as we can, and then we can move forward.
Okay. So Peter asked, are we going to move forward with the executive order only, or are we still going to try to get a carbon cap bill through the legislature?
That's a good question. That's a tough question. I think that I think we need to figure out what the next step is going to be on climate. I'm not sure that there's going to be a lot of appetite to move the carbon cap bill through the legislature, but my take on this is we need to wait and see. I actually think there's some some possibility that industry will want to go back to a carbon cap idea through the legislature because frankly, it's better for them. What we lose without having cap and invest is the investment side of green investments, which hurts and we would love to have, but not at the expense of any kind of weakening. It would have to layer on top of what the governor's already done and with strong rulemaking. So I think that folks are open to the possibility, but I suspect what we probably need to start pivoting to is what are the complementary pieces that we can pick out and move forward on, like 100% clean energy or other ideas, and move those pieces year by year. Because, you know, I've said this before, cap and invest is not like the one policy that we need. It's one important policy, but there's a lot that we're going to need to meet our carbon reduction goals going forward.
Great, thanks. And then we have another question from Ken. How can we keep pressure on DEQ to actually comply with the governor's executive order long term?
We're going to have to basically sit on them metaphorically, Ken. We're going to have to you know, have people at their public hearings and meetings throughout the state. We're going to have to make sure that they know that they're going to get flooded with emails, and that the commissioners that oversee the agency know that we're going to be watching them. And also, we're going to have to make sure that the governor and her team are putting pressure on the agency to do the right thing. So we're going to have to continue to hold the governor accountable, hopefully in a positive way, for those actions. So rulemaking is, like I said, we won the policy, or we won the executive order. We got this in there, but we have to win rulemaking, and we have to win the implementation side.
All right, so we did have a hand raised. I'm going to try to call on Diane, who has her hand raised, who's hopefully still available. I'm going to click the button. We'll see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, my apologies. Diane, do you want to go ahead and ask your question? I just unmuted you. Okay, well, we tried. You can always ask it in the Q&A or put a note in the chats if you'd rather. All right.
So closing out the webinar, I just want to say a little bit about OLCV as an organization. Our work is always ongoing. It never ends. That's good and bad. It's good because we need an organization like OLCV. We have a very unique niche and a role to play within the Oregon environmental community. And it's important that we continue to do that work. It's unfortunate that we will always have to do this work because there will always be those who don't cherish the environment the way we do, who want to pollute our rivers and our air. Organizationally, this is for everybody, and not just for OLCV, but for all of our partners, for you at home. This is a bit of a weird time. Luckily, one of the things that the OLCV Board of Directors has really emphasized is building for the long term and ensuring that our financial position is good, that we're not, moving from month to month, but rather thinking long term strategically with our finances. So the good news is, with regard to this, although we're not really eligible because we do political work from so far really any of the government assistance, the hard work and the generous contributions that our members have given us have put us in a position where we can continue to do the work that we do really effectively for quite a while. So we're in a pretty strong position. That said, this is a bit of a challenging month for us. As you can imagine, this is when we were getting ready to have our annual event. That's the largest fundraiser for our organization for the course of the year.
Well over 10% of our annual budget.
Right. And so we postponed that to September. So it does leave us a bit in a challenging position. So we do want to ask if you're able to support us in this time, to give a contribution. Many of you I know on this call have already done that, and I just want to thank you for that. We really do appreciate that. We've asked our sponsors if they're willing and able to support us now instead of waiting until September, when our live event will hopefully be. And all of the ones that we've listed below have committed to support us now and are sending the resources today rather than down the road, which is just incredibly generous for those companies and organizations to do. So if you're able to contribute, we would deeply appreciate that. And we have a match of $3,500. So every dollar that you're able to give to this virtual event, whether you've given it already or you give it today, tomorrow, or over the course of the next week, will be matched up to $3,500. So you could be able to double your investment in your support for OLCV. So if you're able to do that, I would thank you very much. And at that time, I want to just kind of start closing things down, and thank you all for spending the time and joining us today. We really appreciate it. This is the first time we've done this, which is pretty exciting.
And then we also just wanted to share, this is the link for you to visit live whenever you are ready. And you can see the videos from the candidates that we referenced, videos for Shemia Fagan, for Tara Hurst, Mary Pivoto, and for Eileen Kiley, just 5 great candidates we hope you'll be as excited about as we are. And so check it out, share it with friends if you want. It's a good chance to kind of get people's attention on the primary coming up and thinking and talking about the environment before they fill out their ballots.
Well, thank you everyone for spending your Friday afternoon with us. We appreciate it and hope that you are all going to continue to stay safe, stay home, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully soon.
Now it's the awkward time where I search around to end the meeting. Thanks everybody. Have a great weekend and thanks for joining us.